Welcome to the Better Eye Health Podcast with Damon P. Miller II, MD. This particular podcast is an excerpt from the weekly conference calls. Dr. Miller focuses on different topics connected to the Better Eye Health program. The topic of this session is A Healthy Body Equals a Healthy Mind. Here is Dr. Miller.
Today we're going to start off and talk a little bit about memory and supplements that might be useful for memory, techniques that might help improve memory, and the relationship between lifestyle and memory. In other words, things you might do, simple things you might do to preserve and improve memory. And I say this because this is, everybody's worried about Alzheimer's disease. People find themselves having difficulty remembering names and maybe things like that as they get older. And I just want to say that there is a certain amount of deterioration of memory that occurs with age, but you never want to blame anything on age. I know that sounds like a crazy statement, but an exaggerated loss of memory would be abnormal. And so certainly if you feel like you just can't remember anything, then that would be reason to be talking about it with me or with your physician. But more importantly, what I want to say is that there are some things you can do to preserve memory, to prevent the loss of memory, but there are no easy fixes with this. I was a speaker at a conference last fall called neuroregeneration. So neuro like neurology or neurologist, or brain meaning nervous neuroregeneration. So what are the things you can do to regenerate your brain and your nerves and your spinal cord and your eyes? And I was obviously talking about the eyes at that conference. And one of the things that was a piece of that conference was a protocol that someone had come up with for preserving memory. And what's interesting about it is that it's simply a checklist of all the things we talk about over the course of these calls, a checklist of all the things you might do to maintain good health. So things like a clean diet, not drinking alcohol, not smoking cigarettes, dealing with stress, getting adequate exercise, breathing, meditation, detoxification, and doing things to engage your mind, it's kind of a use it or lose it thing. If you want to think in this case, you want to think of the brain as a muscle that it needs to be worked out. And then there's some more intangible things like, I'm just going to change it, there's a little background noise. There are some more intangible things which we talked about in this conference that I've noticed, anybody who's working with people, especially as they get a little older, has noticed, is that you need a purpose in your life. You need to have a reason to live. You need to have a reason to be healthy. And for some people, it's taking care of their grandchildren or watching their grandchildren grow up. Some people, they're still very much engaged in a career or a job that they love, and that keeps them going. Some people get involved, they retire from the job they had all their life, and then they apply their gifts and their skills and their time and their energy to something else that means something to them, and that's what keeps them going. But if you retire from a job or leave a job and think you're going to just sit back and put your feet up and watch TV and have your mind be healthy, you're mistaken. And so it's this vague idea of purpose is a very important thing at not just keeping your memory, but keeping you going, keeping you out of depression, keeping you engaged and enlivened and enthused and excited about life. So that and I'm putting together, this wasn't really put together in the conference, but I am putting together a kind of checklist of these things, and we'll put that up on the wall once I get that, but that's going to be probably a few weeks. And I also wanted to talk, just as we talk about memory, about supplements for memory. And we did touch on this, and this is kind of what inspired me to want to make this the topic for this week. I know some of this is a little repetitive, but there are no supplements that anyone has ever found that will take a healthy mind and make it work better, probably with the exception of speed or things like that, things which do enhance function, but they're very corrosive and damaging, and there's nothing that is, if you think of it as something that might be allowed in professional sports or Olympic sports or something like that, there are performance-enhancing drugs, but the ones that are actually safe and that you'd ever want to use don't really help memory much. And interestingly, and again, this is repeating something I said before, but there is a group out there. There are professional and amateur memory competitions. And I know that sounds a little crazy, but people who do these competitive things with trying to, you're handed a deck of cards and you've got 60 seconds to memorize the order of the cards in the deck of cards, or you're handed a list with names or things like this. And there are tricks, and you can learn to do this, and people work at it, and there are international competitions about this. And these people, if there was some way that would give them an edge in those competitions, they'd be using it. And they've tried everything that anybody has ever proposed, and nobody has found anything that really does anything to enhance memory in a healthy brain. Now, having said that, there are things that if your brain is a little unhealthy, if you're getting older and the circulation is compromised, and this is a consideration for people with all of us that are worried about eye disease, because the loss of healthy circulation is one of the things that happens in the eye and the brain in these degenerative diseases that involve the eye and the brain. And so there are a few supplements like vinpocetine and ginkgo that we've talked about in the past. Those things very gently open up circulation in the small vessels of the brain, and often with better circulation, everything in the brain works better. Regeneration works better, healing works better, memory works better, cognition, thinking, problem solving all work better. And so if your brain's a little compromised, there are herbs and supplements like that that help. And they're quite safe. They don't damage your liver. They don't give you high blood pressure or do things that some other substances might. But really, the main thing is to not worry too much about this unless it's a major, major problem. All of the things that we talk about that you would do to take care of your health and take care of the healthier eyes are going to do a lot to take care of the healthier brain, including the microcurrent stimulation. There is a resurgence in interest in something called cranial electrical stimulation, and we'll talk more about that in a future talk, because this is the unit you have for your eyes is appropriate for CES, or cranial electrical stimulation. And not that it's going to make your memory a lot better, but there are different ways to use this that would help your brain a little bit. So we'll talk about that in the future. And that's about all I want to say for memory now. So we're going to go to the Q&A session.
Tune in for more podcasts and other presentations. Go to www.bettereyehealth.com. There is hope for sight.